Welcome everyone. My name is David and I'm a policy analyst in the Renewable and Electrical Energy Division. And our director is Andre Bernier. We're under the Electricity Resources branch under Marco Prezzuti, which is within the low carbon energy sector under Molly Johnson. So thanks everyone for taking the time today to learn about the cybersecurity aspects of the Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways program that NRCan launched recently. Before getting started, I would like to acknowledge that where I am right now in Ottawa is on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. Today, I am joined by my colleague, Kevin from Natural Resources Canada, as well as colleagues from Public Safety Canada, Pierre-Luc, Rob, and Evan. And you'll hear from them a little bit later on. So before we get started, please ensure that you are on mute during today's presentation. We will be taking questions at the end of the session. Please ensure your questions are constructive, respectful, and relevant to today's topic. And feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box as we progress. If you're calling in via telephone, please let us know who you are with a quick email to our program inbox, as you can see on the screen and again at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Today's presentation will focus on the cybersecurity requirements of our program. I will start with a brief overview of our program, then we will dive into the cybersecurity aspect, followed by the Q&A period. We will compile a list of FAQs from the discussion today. The FAQs will be made available on our website in a few weeks. We are also recording this webinar. The recording will be made available at a later date. Next slide, please. So for some context, the Government of Canada has set a target for Canada to become a net zero emitter by 2050. Canada already has a huge advantage to achieving this goal because our grid provides power that is both clean and affordable, with 82% of our generation coming from non-emitting sources. Despite this, electricity currently accounts for less than 20% of Canada's overall energy use across our economy. Becoming a net zero emitter by 2050 will require 3 decisive steps. Firstly, expanding our clean electricity supply. This entails replacing existing fossil fuel power generation with power generated from non-emitting sources, as well as adding additional capacity to meet demand growth. Secondly, using more clean power through electrification of energy use across key sectors of the economy. And thirdly, using energy smarter, using energy efficiently, and using the technologies, efficiency technologies, as well as conservation. This also means that we need to use all of our electricity system assets in a more efficient manner. And this will require major infrastructure investments by all levels of government in order to build new non-emitting electricity capacity and to upgrade existing grid infrastructure. An affordable supply of clean and reliable power is essential to maintain Canada's competitiveness and our high quality of life. The federal government can play a role in helping to transform the grid while supporting ratepayers. The 2020 Fall Economic Statement presented Canada's vision for a green economic recovery that is inclusive, sustainable, and creates good jobs for Canadians. In addition, the Healthy Environment and Healthy Economy Climate Plan released in December 2020 has committed an additional $964 million over 4 years to advance smart renewable energy and grid modernization projects. And this is the initiative we are speaking to today. Next slide, please. So the Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways Program, or SREPS for short, is a program designed to support the transition to a cleaner electricity grid and to create the foundational operational capabilities in our grid today to support the net zero economy of 2050. In addition, we recognize the underrepresentation of women, gender diverse, Indigenous, and racialized peoples in the electricity and renewable energy sector, and how this has been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. This program merges the importance of increasing clean energy generation capacity with the need to modernize our grids and electricity system operations, while supporting the increased equity, diversity, and inclusivity needed in this sector. The program meets these objectives in a 3-pronged approach. The program will support new energy generation coming online and ensuring it is able to provide the services grid operators need, utility and system operators updating their software and hardware, and the creation of equity, diversity, and inclusion plans to increase equity in the electricity and renewable energy sectors. Now to our area of focus today. Next slide. Cybersecurity. During the workshop, we hope to communicate the need for cybersecurity to protect Canada's energy infrastructure from cyber threats and provide guidance on how to successfully complete the Canadian cybersecurity tool and the SREC cybersecurity template. Both the CCST, Canadian Cybersecurity Tool, and the cybersecurity template are required for all applicants to be considered under the program. This ensures that applicants will make use of cybersecurity related controls, standards, and tools, and prioritize actions and investments to improve the project's cybersecurity posture and help strengthen the resilience of Canada's energy infrastructure. Today's session correlates to Applicant Guide Section 5.5 and Appendix E. In addition, if you've received an application package, you may want to refer to the T7 cyber template. So with that, I will hand it off to my colleague, Kevin Fenig, to give us a short primer on cybersecurity and energy infrastructure. Kevin.
Hi, thank you, David, and welcome everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are across the country. Just briefly, my name's Kevin. I work in the Cybersecurity and Energy Policy and Outreach Division. And basically our mandate is to work with critical infrastructure owners and operators, our government partners, both federally and provincially, in order to help provide owners and operators with the tools that they need, the tools and resources that they need to ensure that they're protecting and securing their systems. And so we're here to offer that support and to work with all our partners. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes here before I turn the floor back over to David to get into the nuts and bolts of the cybersecurity requirements for the program. I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about, some of you might be very familiar with this and others not so much, but I'll give a high level overview of just basically the cyber threat landscape and what we're kind of dealing with today. So here this slide is represented from 2014 to 2019. If we wanted to try to fit this a schematic of this nature in from 2019 to present day, I think we'd have a difficulty doing so. Basically, what I'm getting at is that we don't have to scroll the internet for very long or spend a long time listening to the news to find out about the next or the latest cyber attack. And you're probably even more specifically, the headliner these days is ransomware attacks and even supply chain type cyber attacks. So there have been high-profile, impactful attacks on critical infrastructure, specifically over the past year, including the ransomware attack on the US Colonial Pipeline, the SolarWinds supply chain attack, and the Microsoft Exchange server hacks. So all of these incidents are definitely a stark reminder for Canadians, for the government, and for owners and operators that we must remain vigilant against these types of attacks and these types of threats that are out there. I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about, or a minute or so, just about cyber attacks increasing and escalating and becoming more frequently in the energy sector specifically, which is what this picture here depicts. And why is that? So I would say there are 4 key factors. 1, simply there are more threat actors. 2, the energy sector is a very attractive target. 3, and this will relate to the folks we have in the room today, as we move to advance ourselves to a more clean energy economy and the economy becomes more digitally electrified, that's creating additional vulnerabilities and is opening up other opportunities for malicious threat actors. Finally, the fourth factor is the pandemic has exacerbated these vulnerabilities in cyberspace. So cyber threat actors steal money or demand ransom payments. They also steal personal and financial information, IP, trade secrets, etc. They can even disrupt and even further so damage the infrastructure that we rely on, the essential services that Canadians rely on every day. Cyber threat actors can generally be categorized by their motivations and by their sophistication. And the most sophisticated capabilities belong to state-sponsored actors who are motivated by economic, ideological, and geopolitical goals. Cyber criminals is another type of cyber threat actor. They're generally understood to have moderate sophistication compared to nation states. And this is partly in part because they have access to illegal online markets for cyber tools and services, which allow them to conduct complex and sophisticated campaigns. I would point out, though, that not all cyber crimes are sophisticated, nor do they need to be. These actors are looking to target vulnerable and easy to penetrate systems. And so a lack of basic cyber hygiene leaves owners and operators and critical infrastructure open for attack. Of course, we understand and we know it's not possible to prevent every cyber attack, but simply by employing some basic cyber hygiene, your organization can decrease the likelihood that you become a victim of cybercrime. Next slide, please. So these stats, these numbers you see here is basically Statistics Canada did a survey, and it's a biannual survey of cybersecurity and cybercrime. Cybercrime in Canada causes more than $3 billion in economic losses each year. Cyber attacks, again, I spoke to cyber attacks globally on the energy sector, but as you can see from this graphic, the attacks on the Canada's energy sector, we have been a key target as well. You're not likely to hear about the smaller scale attacks, which are happening frequently, daily. The Cyber Center are working diligently, very, very hard to prevent many of these attacks that are happening on a daily basis. So, but these smaller scale attacks get less attention, but also have the potential to be very expensive, disruptive, and destructive. Of course, these attacks can have significant impacts on public safety, national security, and Canada's economy. I'll just read you a couple of the stats here, but they're basically, you can see them here. So one that I want to highlight though is, and they're all very, very important, but like 39% of organizations in the energy sector that participated in the survey reported that they were impacted by a cyber incident. It's nearly double what was reported by all other industries that were surveyed combined. Also, 55% of businesses experience downtime, and the average cost in terms of dollars spent in terms of recovering from cyber incidents was $40,000, and that's again more than 4 times as great as all other industries combined. So I think that just gives you a sense of kind of the impacts of cyber incidents to the energy sector. Next slide, please. So with that, cyber threats are a risk not only to Canada's infrastructure, but can also have impacts on your system performance and the costs associated with your project specifically. Canada's electric grid is transforming into one that is highly autonomous, intelligent, and increasingly integrated with connected renewable energy resources and devices. Naturally, while this transformation is key and critical to decarbonization and to the goals that David spoke to earlier, it also expands the potential cyber attack service. In fact, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, or the Cyber Center, assesses that cyber threat actors are likely adapting their activities to new opportunities provided by the transition to smart grid technologies. The Cyber Center assesses that new forms of smart grid technology will likely increase the vulnerability of industrial control systems to cyber threats. When connected to the grid's distribution systems, devices such as rooftop solar units, smart water heaters, and battery storage units introduce cyber vulnerabilities. More internet-connected devices and applications provide more opportunities for malicious actors to access information, demand ransom, disrupt operations, or even cause disruption and have physical consequences. So I'll just give you one example. According to officials at one national lab in the US, DERs can make distribution systems more vulnerable because of their distributed nature, their control and communication requirements, and the larger number of devices and access points operating outside of an organization's control. So companies that offer residential, and this is a US report, companies that offer residential solar energy products can retain the capability to remotely monitor and manage their units. In 2015, a US solar energy company remotely updated the software of 800,000 of its customers' smart solar inverters through the company's networks. However, the national lab found that such remote access poses a vulnerability. Specifically, an attacker may be able to compromise the company's access to these devices to instruct them to perform actions outside their desired functionality, which could result in disruptions to your project or to the grid's distribution system's operations. For instance, an attacker may instruct compromised solar inverters to inject power into the grid to cause voltage and stability issues, potentially resulting in a power outage. So we know that cybersecurity thus is fundamental to advancing your projects, to advance smart renewable energy and grid modernization projects. And these technologies should be designed, built, and used with cybersecurity as a key requirement. Energy sector owners and operators and organizations should be thinking about their cybersecurity posture and the need to manage their cybersecurity risk with a security by design approach, recognizing that cyber attacks are a case of when, not if. Next slide, please. So finally, I just wanted to end with a slide on how the federal government is here to help you and what the federal government has been doing. You know, the government of Canada has invested more than $1 billion since 2018 to protect Canadians from cybercrime, respond to evolving threats, and help defend critical government and private sector systems. The government is continuously expanding its efforts to support critical infrastructure owners and operators in protecting their systems and helping them to reduce their cybersecurity risks. We do so by providing organizations with enhanced awareness of cyber risks and vulnerabilities. And as I alluded to earlier, there are tools and resources, which we'll get to later in the presentation from our good colleagues at Public Safety, that will help you improve your cybersecurity posture. And so, again, one of these valuable tools, which you'll hear about very shortly, is the Canadian Cybersecurity Tool, or CCST. This virtual self-assessment tool, developed by Public Safety Canada in collaboration with the Communications Security Establishment and its Cyber Center, will be a key component of your application process. And so with that, I'll hold the questions to the end, but with that, thank you for the time and thank you for everyone's time. David and everybody on the line, I'll pass it back over to you. Over.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Can we go to the next slide? So here are the objectives. These are listed in the applicant guide, so I won't read them here, but I just want to put them on the screen for your awareness. When you submit the cyber component of your application, make sure to try to address these objectives directly. So the first one has to do with control standards and tools. What measures are you using and what standards do they relate to? The second one has to do with, ongoing activity. So through the project's life cycle, there should be a continued effort to protect the system. And lastly, for the applicant's awareness, in the final report, cybersecurity lessons learned will be required. So that's for your knowledge. And we're going to go more in depth in the template in just a moment. Next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. So NRCan requires all applicants to use the CCST to complete a virtual self-assessment. And applicants will need to first request login credentials from Public Safety Canada. When requesting a username and password, please self-identify as an SREPS applicant in the subject line for expedited processing. And when selecting a category for your organization, please select Other and then SREPS. Please fill out the template honestly. The SREPS funding is not contingent on the CCST grade, and Public Safety will not share the results of your assessment. So with that, I will turn it to our colleagues in Public Safety Canada for a presentation on the CCST.
The Critical Infrastructure Director here at Public Safety Canada. The first Now You Know session being held by the Critical Infrastructure Director here at Public Safety Canada. Today's session, we're going to be providing an overview of the Canadian Cybersecurity Tool, or CCST for short. Today's sessions are going to provide you with an overview of this new tool and hopefully answer all your questions that you may have. As you may be aware, public safety has been offering both physical and cybersecurity assessments for years. But with the onset of the COVID pandemic, we were forced to re-examine our approach to in-person assessments. We set our sights on redefining our cybersecurity assessment approach first, and hence the CCST was born. Rooted in an initial collaboration with the Communications Security Establishment's Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, the CCST was initially piloted with the health sector in an attempt to better secure their systems in response to increased cyber-based threats to the CI environment. Enter the CCST. Now, the Canadian Cybersecurity Tool is a fully virtual self-assessment tool. It's an easy-to-use, relatively quick to complete, and voluntary assessment which will provide you with an overview of your operational resilience and cybersecurity posture, while also providing comparative results of how your organization performs against other peer entities within your sector. Now, the CCST is designed to assess the critical infrastructure and supporting elements of Canada. What's the critical infrastructure, you may ask? Now, Canada has designated 10 CI sectors that include health, transport, government, energy, water, manufacturing, finance, information and communication technology, safety, and food. We've also created a supporting category that contains academia, Indigenous organizations, places of mass gathering, research and development, and retail. Now, should you fall into any of these categories, you are a candidate to have access to the tool. Okay, so I think I'm eligible, so now what? Well, the first step is to send an email to the cyber engagement team. We will review your request and provide you with a username and password to access the tool. Now, once in the tool, you'll have an option of either French or English. After selecting a language, you will be presented with a user agreement in which you will have to accept all information collected in the CCST will be shared with you as a recipient, public safety as the stewards of the tool, and CSC as a technical authority. So once you click on agree and move into the next stage or the next portion of the assessment, and this is where we're going to provide an overview of the tool itself. Now, again, I've explained some of these details already. What you need to know is the survey is essentially divided into 3 areas. First, you've got your organizational information, your technical resilience, and then your program resilience. Now, I'll cover all these in stages as we go through, and you should be able to see the differences in each of the sections. So let's start with the organizational information. This is where you're going to see the standard stuff related to what sector you belong to, and we've listed all these. And any of these sectors, when you click on it, you get a drop-down supporting box where you can go further into defining your subsector. We'll be recording the province you're going to be participating from, and then we got supporting information that relates to the type of environment, or the type of assessment we're going to be doing, the overall workforce, so on and so forth. So let's go through and start filling in some of this information. Okay, so first off, I'm going to select water, and then you can see here in this version, you've got the drop-down sectors over here, where you see water supply, potable drinking water, wastewater, dams, and other water resources. So we're going to select water, we're going to select water supply, and we're going to select Newfoundland and Labrador. This brings us further into the section where you then pick. Now, we've written this to be, you can do an OT assessment, operational technology, or an IT assessment, or a combination of both. For this example, we're going to pick an industrial environment, but just be aware, it's going to be the same question set you're going to see for any of this. What we just want to do is track the type of environment you're going to be assessing. Now, what I want to draw attention to here is underneath annual budget dedicated to cybersecurity, you can see where we failed to put in a selection. So if you were to do that while you're doing the tool, this is going to kick back an error. It's going to identify the portion of the survey that you missed, and you're going to have to fill in this portion to advance to the next sector, next section of the survey. So let's go ahead and fill that in. And that should get us rolling forward into the additional parts of this survey. Now, the next section is going to be a request for information on the types of incidents that you've seen within your organization. Now, the reason we're doing this is, for example, let's say you've noticed an uptick in the amount of ransomware incidents you're experiencing. We're then going to use that information to hopefully produce more awareness products based around ransomware. So that's how we're going to use the organizational information. What are the threats that the CI, Critical Infrastructure of Canada, is seeing, and where do we need to focus our efforts on? None of this information is going to be covered in the report that you're going to be receiving after, but again, valuable information that we want to collect. So once you click on, we'll use ransomware as the example. You're then going to get a custom drop-down box where you're going to be asked for more information. And that's going to be average cost to recover, your recovery strategies, and what resources you use to respond or mitigate. So again, let's go ahead and fill in those. And for each of the typical events you're going to see the resulting drop-down box is going to give you the opportunity to add more information. And this essentially takes care of the, we'll call it tombstone information or the organizational information that's included in the survey. And now we're going to get into the actual assessment portion of this tool. Now we're going to start, again, reminder, it's divided into two sections. The first section we're going to be looking at is the technical resilience. Now we base the technical resilience on the existing guidance from the Communications Security Establishment called the Baseline Cybersecurity Controls for Small and Medium Businesses. If you haven't seen this, it's a really great resource combined with many other resources that are available on the cyber.gc.ca. It essentially outlines 13 steps that you can take within your organization to better promote cybersecurity. Now, we took these 13 steps and we developed 15 follow-up questions, and this is what's going to be comprised of the actual assessment tool. So let's go ahead and look at these questions. Again, each of these sections, we're going to provide the overview. This is what we're trying to do, and then we're going to provide the reference material should you want more information. Now, looking at the actual questions, this is an example of how all the questions are going to be formed in the assessment methodology. So we'll start with question 2.1, and it's labeled 2.1 because the organizational information is the 1.0 portion. So first question, do you have a means to maintain your technical documentation? So when you associated with each of these questions, it's very specific, targeted, possible responses. Now it's a rolling scale. If you select no, obviously you don't have much of an approach to the question being asked. And if you select yes, it's a formalized process. This is as good as it gets for a response. Then we've got the rolling scale in between. So if you look at the answers, we'll pick the second one, for example. Yes, and this is in relation to network diagrams. Yes, we have one, but it's not clear the last time it was updated. Yes, it's been updated in the past 6 to 12 months. It hasn't been updated in the past 3 to 6 months, or yes, it's been updated and it's a formalized process. And this is an example of the approach we take to questions. We have the specific question, and then we have the tailored responses for each of the 15 questions you're going to be exposed to in the technical portion of the assessment. Now, moving forward, again, I mentioned we've got 15 questions. You have to go through and answer all of them. At the very end, there's a section for comments, should you wish to provide additional information. Now, this information is going to be used for after the fact if you need to go back with an organization and explore an idea. But essentially what we're going to be covering in the report and the assessment itself is your answers to all the questions we provide. So again, 15 questions. This compromises this is the technical portion of the assessment. We're now going to move into the program side of the assessment. So the program side is based on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Now, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework is a well-known and endorsed here in Canada approach to cybersecurity standards. Their framework version uses a mantra of recovery, identify, protect, detect, and respond. So we took the fundamentals that are embedded in the NIST cybersecurity standards, and then we developed, we focused in on 6 domains. 6 domains that are groupings of the domains that are referenced in the NIST cybersecurity standards. These are asset and control management, configuration and change management, vulnerability and incident management, service continuity and risk management, external dependencies management, training and situational awareness. So then we've taken these 6 domains and we've broken down similar sections as you've seen in the technical resilience. And we have a assessment portion that is focused on each of these domains. So maybe you don't 100% understand what asset and control management is, but you should have a good idea what this is going into the actual assessment. But we provide that quick overview. This is what we mean by asset management, and this is what we mean by control management. Again, this is to give you awareness to the questions that are going to be following. Now, again, as the questions I mentioned in the technical portion, we take the same approach to the program side. For example, we'll take the second 3.2. Are the assets that directly support services inventory? No, less than 25% of assets are inventory, not necessarily a good thing. Well, not really. Only 25% to 50% of assets are inventoried and up to date. Somewhat, 50% to 75% of assets are inventoried. Yes, 75 to 90% is obviously getting better. And then yes, 90% to 100% of assets are inventoried and up to date. This is obviously, the best answer you can have for this kind of question. Same methodology applies for all the other questions. And we've also got the not applicable. To some of these questions, maybe you're not going to be in a position to answer it, or maybe it doesn't apply to the environment that you're being assessed. But again, it's the same approach we took for the technical that we did for the program side. Now, the difference in the program side is obviously we're going to be covering more questions, whereas the technical side, we've got 15 questions. In the program side, we've got 23. Because again, we've got to cover all those domains we mentioned before. And now, so this essentially completes the assessment portion of the tool. Ideally, it takes, if you have the correct people assembled to answer these questions, it takes anywhere from a half hour to an hour to complete. And ideally, we want to see, people sitting down in a room answering these questions in a team-based environment, or use Teams or some other type of online sharing platform to go through and answer these questions. Now, at the end, we provide two options for receiving the report, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Essentially, you get a password-protected PDF file, encrypted with the same email you use, encrypted with the same login you use to access the tool, or PGP encrypted email. The choice is up to you. I do want to draw attention to the fact that if you are going to be filling out the tool, very important to actually hit submit at the end. And the reason I say this is we have a number of instances where people have filled in the tool, gotten to the end, and they failed to select a check mark. So you don't actually get the thank you for completing our survey, thank you for completing our assessment application. This is what you want to see at the end of it. Else, you're going to be coming back to us saying, where's my report? I completed this weeks ago. We're going to have to go back and tell you that you forgot to hit the submit button. Now, that's an overview of the assessment tool itself. So you do all this, it's then going to generate a report on our side that we're going to send to you within 5 days. So what we're going to go through now is we're going to go through the report you're going to receive after you've completed the assessment. Now, we use the traffic light protocol. If you're not familiar with the traffic light protocol, again, what this essentially is, it's a way to classify sensitive information from a government and private sector point of view, and think about what it looks like to look at a traffic light. If it means red, shouldn't be going. Amber, proceed with caution. Green, I'm gonna move forward, but I'm gonna check my left and right arcs to make sure. We use this classification as a way to add some sensitivity to the information we're going to be presenting to you. Now, there's no attributable information to your specific organization that's going to be available in the report. So worst case scenario, someone finds this report, all they're going to see is information related to your sector and subsector. There's no way to trace it back to the actual organization that completed. And it's designed that way, that anonymity within the tool is designed for extra security. So that being an overview of what the report is, I'm now going to get into the actual details. Now, the report itself is divided into 3 areas. The first section is the overview. It's going to be 6 to 7 pages. This is going to give you the high-level information. And then the second part is going to be more detailed. We're essentially going to repeat all the questions that we ask you in the assessment and give you some suggested advice. I'll go through all that in just a bit. Okay, so we're going to start with the first section. First of all, we're going to start with technical resilience. Now, looking at the chart here in front of you, and let me just zoom in a little bit here. So what you're going to see here is you're going to see each of the blue bars represent your answers to all the questions we ask you in the first 15 questions. You're also going to see 3 line graphs as well, and these line graphs represent everyone who's completed the survey, everyone in your sector who's completed the survey, and then the subsector results of your survey. So if you can, now the idea is you look at the chart and it's easy to see where this organization, again, the blue bars, lines up with the results of the sector, subsector, and everybody's results. So look at question 2.5. You can see their responses are kind of below industry standards and sector standards. And then if you look more towards the end at 2.3 and 2.13 and 2.14, you can see where their answers are above the bar. So you can immediately look at this and say, here's where we're doing really good. Here's where we're doing bad. And here's where we're kind of on par. And this is the whole point. It's that comparative results. This is how I did, but this is also how everyone else did. This is how the sector itself did. We're going to provide the actual percentage responses as well to the questions in the section immediately following each graph. We're also going to give you a maturity level ranking. Now, we base this maturity level ranking on known industry standards and the approaches we were using here at Public Safety to doing assessments. And we essentially developed a 5-stage rating scale, of which we include as an appendix at the end. So, for example, this organization did fairly well. They scored 61%, right on the margin between 61 and 80.9%, which puts them into a mature rating. We provide the annex at the end that explains what does it mean to be mature, what does it mean to be advanced. So, for example, maybe you scored lower, you want to see what it takes to get to that next level, you're going to have all that information. So we do that for the technical side, and we also do the same thing for the program side. Now, looking at the chart, obviously we're going to have a bit more information because we've got 23 questions to go through. You can see some of the blank areas on the chart represent the areas where they said no, and any question that had a non-applicable, you're going to see an NA appear in this chart. But again, it's the same approach. We're going to provide the rankings and the comparative results, as well as what does it mean to be level 3 developed, and we're going to give you that explanation towards the bottom. Now, I mentioned the domains itself. We also, within the program side, break down your performance in each of the domains. Again, the four bar graphs represent each of your performance in each of the domains. You can see here when you look at the blue, which is the stakeholders' responses. Obviously, there's a bit of work to do in some of these domains. You can see, for situational awareness, we're pretty good. External dependencies, not so good. What else do we have? Asset and control management, pretty good as well. But again, ideally, you can look immediately at this and see where the gaps are in your organization and hopefully take the steps to address those gaps. Now, we give you the technical, the program, and then the domain-based results. And this, of course, results in an overall score for both the technical and the program side. And again, it's easy to see here from a technical point of view, this particular organization is doing, definitely better than the standards. But for the program side, there's some work to do. So when you look at the report and say, where do I need to focus? You're hopefully going to narrow in on the program side. As a technical side, it seems fairly well set. Now, this whole overview section, which is where you're going to find the meat of the information, this is more than likely what senior decision makers are going to want to see. But we also provide every question we've asked you in the assessment itself. And this is what the next portion of the survey is going to be. Now, we provide all the information that was given in the assessment here in written form. Because once you complete the assessment, once you hit that send button, you're no longer going to have access to the material that's in the assessment methodology. So again, we explain what do we mean by technical resilience. We give you the links to the baseline cybersecurity controls for small and medium businesses. And then we list all the questions that we asked in the assessment, and we give you all your answers. Now, what we do after that is we provide. Now, in some instances, the questions are grouped based on the question that's on the question that's being asked, and sometimes each individual question has specific reference material we can use to provide additional advice. Now, it's not going to say you did this, you have to do this to make sure you have a better score. It's going to give you that general information to say, maintaining technical documentation is a key continuity plan activity, which will ensure the procedures and policies to recover from significant cybersecurity events are supported with current and accurate information. This is the kind of information, advice, and guidance that you're going to receive for all the questions that were asked in the assessment. So we do that for the program side, for the technical side. We obviously do it again for the program resilience side. We're going to explain what are the NIST cybersecurity framework. We're going to list the domains again. Then we're going to list each of the explanations that we have in the domains, and we're going to do all the supporting questions as well. Now, this takes us to the information that's contained in the overview. and then the details section, and then this brings us to the annex section. Now, the annex section, I mentioned this before. Let's say, for example, you go through the assessment, you end up at a level 2 at a basic. You think to yourself, you know, well, I don't like being basic. But you shouldn't. You should want to advance to the next level. Okay, what does it take to be developed? What does it take to be mature? And how do I get to that Shangri-La of advance? What you're going to see is you're going to see the explanations for what it means. And we take the same approach. The technical assessment side has the same 5-level approach to classification. We take the same approach in the program side as well. We're going to have a bit more meat in the program side because there's more information to explain. But again, you're going to have access to all this information. The final portion of the report you're going to receive is going to have additional resources and links. As I mentioned before, we have additional resources here at Public Safety to do evaluations that cover both physical assessments and a more in-depth cybersecurity assessment. We also have various links from the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. These are just a few of the many great resources they have available on their sites, and follow-up points from both the National Cyber Crime Coordination Unit at the RCMP, or NC3, and ISET. And this essentially is all the information. This is the CCST process in a nutshell. So, as you know, if you're going to take away what are the 6 points I want to remember from this, it's first, are you a member of the critical infrastructure or one of the supported areas? If your answer is yes, then you're basically in the door. You can get rolling on the CCST. As I mentioned before, the tool takes, on average, under an hour to complete, even less if you have the required people in the room or on the line to answer those questions, which leads to the next point. Assemble your A team of people. You know, all those folks that you feel are going to provide the information that the CCST is evaluating. And we'll provide you in advance those 38 questions, just so you know what, if I need to answer these questions, these are the people I need to have in the room. Obviously, don't forget to hit submit. Can't tell you how many times we had to remind people to hit that submit button, so don't forget to do that. Again, our goal is 5 business days later, you're going to receive your evaluation and follow-up advice and guidance to improve your resiliency, and that's it. Repeat the process as desired. This is a really good tool to use from a baselining point of view. You know, if I want to paint it in a scenario, let's say you do this and you come back a year later after hopefully you've made some changes, run the tool again, and the idea is that you're going to have hopefully better performance in the tool. So as I said, this is a tool in a nutshell. You can see our email contact here. It's not the shortest in the world. If I was to give you advice, if you were to Google CCST and public safety, you're going to find this tool. So send us an email. We'll get you on the tool. We'll get you rolling through it, and hopefully better secure your system. So with that being said, we're now going to open the floor up to a couple of questions.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank my colleague Rob at Public Safety for providing that video for us. I think it's very helpful, and it goes through what all the SREPS applicants need and maybe even more. Next slide, please. So what you need for SREPS is to complete the CCST, but to submit the T7 template. So before jumping into the T7 template, one thing I'd like to mention is that SREPS recognizes the diverse kinds of applicants to the program. We understand that cyber capacity for each organization is going to differ. We simply ask applicants to complete the CCST to the best of their ability, and then to use it to help complete the SREPS T7 template. And of course, this is the document that's a part of your full application package that you need to submit to us. So here's some information, but I'm not sure if we can pop up the template so you can see what it looks like in case you haven't seen it before. So there it is. There are 2 sections to the template. At the beginning, there is a text box of 600 words that you need to fill out, and then there's a table below. So I'll start with the first section. In the first section, you have to indicate that you have completed the CCST. We also ask that you describe at a high level what the results and learnings were. The CCST report itself does not need to be included. In addition, we want you to describe how the project meets the cybersecurity objectives. Again, it's in the applicant guide, and I showed it on the screen a little bit earlier. or in other words, in plain language, what activities or measures will be used in your project to ensure cybersecurity is addressed. These may include simple steps such as password updates, patches, encryption, restricted access to sensitive information, as well as more sophisticated measures such as adherence to full standards or adopting a full cyber strategy. As well, in this first section, please reference cyber standards and tools such as the NERC, that's NERC, Critical Infrastructure Protection Standards, or NIST, Cybersecurity Framework, or the CCST, to provide the confirmation that the measures that you're taking actually align with the industry best practices. If you are connecting to a utility that has cyber compliance standards, please include a description of that as well. That's relevant and it helps your application. Examples of standards are also included in Appendix E of the applicant guide, as well as this presentation, which has further resources, including links to the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and we're going to show that in a moment. In the second section, that's the table that you see, you're required to include what we call outputs and outcomes in a table format. So these are measurable, tangible results from the measures and actions that you proposed earlier. They may also be used as part of your final report. Outputs are the actions that will be implemented, which may include the updating of software patches, cybersecurity awareness training, and that sort of thing. And outcomes are the result of those actions. For instance, software patches ensure up-to-date protection against cyber threats and a more robust system, and cyber training provides a more proactive and secure workforce who know how to prevent cyber threats and also how to respond when incidents do occur. And there are some examples of outputs and outcomes further down. So that's what it looks like. And if you have successfully completed a registration, you would have already seen this. So could we go back to the presentation, please? To summarize, the template will be evaluated based on whether the CCST has been completed, whether measures and activities are listed with references to standards, and whether outputs and outcomes were listed for tangible tracking of progress. As previously mentioned, the CCST grade will not impact your evaluation. However, either an incomplete template or a template that has no cyber measures listed will be asked to resubmit this section. So that's it. We'll just fly through the closing few slides here. Next one. Here are, just earlier, there's for more information. There are a bunch of links here, and we're going to post the slides as well as the webinar recording. So you'll have access to all these great resources in case you want to learn more about cyber. Next slide. So we're currently accepting project registrations and applications. This is the last of 6 workshops that we've completed, and all the workshop information will be posted shortly. Next slide. And lastly, here is our program website, which you may be familiar with, and also our inbox, where you can ask any question and we'll triage you to the right people and try to get back to you as soon as we can. So with that, I will turn it to Bryce to field any questions that might have come in, and we'll answer them here. And if not, if we don't get to them, feel free to always email the inbox, and we check that every day. Thank you.